to the GabTalks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olczak. To participate in the 2024 Book Award competitions, please visit independentpressaward.com and NewYorkCityBigBookAward.com. This podcast will be chatting with author and historian Robin Reams. Robin's most recent novel, Aboard Blackbeard's Queen, is the winner of the 2024 Independent Press Award and the 2023 New York City Big Book Award in action adventure. Her second novel, Unlocking Blackbeard's Skeleton, was awarded the 2024 Independent Press Award for Young Adults Fiction. Spanning across genres, Robin's debut novel, Shadow of the Mountain, won the 2023 New York City Big Book Award in Christian Fiction. Robin has been creating stories since childhood. Her homeschool experience was enriched with museum visits, historic sites, and living history events. Her love of history and nature is evident in all of her books. Robin joins us today from North Carolina. Congratulations, Robin. Nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, Gabby, and thank you so much for having me.
It was great to have you. So the last time we met at book camp events and award ceremony in June, we did a mini GAP talk. So
we did.
It was so fun. Thank you for joining us for a full-length GAP talk.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having us. Yes, so the first one you mentioned was Aboard Blackbeard's Queen.
Right, and the second book?
The second one is Unlocking Blackbeard's Skeletons.
Okay, fabulous. So, Robin, let's share a little bit about...
There's the Shadow.
Oh, Shadow of the Mountain, that's right. Let's share a little bit about you with our listeners.
Okay.
As mentioned in the intro, you were homeschooled.
Yes, ma'am.
How did your childhood and your faith inspire you to become an author?
Well, just the support of my parents and family. I went to kindergarten and first grade, so I had a little bit of experience there, but being able to homeschool, I was able to learn about the history, and then my parents would take me and my younger sister Holly on the living history sites, and so to have it come alive like that really inspired me to be able to not just see it but to experience it. And when I started to write, I wanted my books to reflect that as much as possible, to instill that in any reader, but especially young readers, to get out and to see where we came from. And it's not just, the big names like my books are Blackbeard, but, all the people around Blackbeard could have been an ancestor or a family member. And so doing homeschooling also, we did our family genealogy, and we didn't do the ancestry version. My mom actually took us to the courthouse to see the actual documents. And so to see that in real time inspired me also to do for Blackbeard, sort of like I did my own family genealogy. I was able to not really do his family genealogy, but the people around him. And so I was able to study deed books, the original governor's notes from the state of North Carolina, and to actually see it and that's the real deal. That meant a lot to me.
Oh, yeah. You refer to yourself as a historian, and you've been delving into history since you were a child. Your novels, Unlocking Blackbeard's Skeleton and Aboard Blackbeard's Queen, take place in June 1718, and they're all set in colonial Bathtown. So share with our readers, because I didn't know this, what is the significance of that setting?
Well, Bath, anybody that goes there today, it's this very, very small town. I mean, it's hardly anything there. But at that time period, it was the hub for everything. I mean, it would have been, if we hadn't had a hurricane a little bit later than that, a couple of years later, it kind of messed up the inlet at Ocracoke. It was scheduled to kind of be more like our current day Wilmington, which was huge. But it was the first town, the first library for North Carolina, the first church in North Carolina, first port. The governor lived there part of the time, and then he lived in Edenton part of the time, and also the tax collector Tobias Knight. And so you got all these characters in my book, but they were real people that helped shape our North Carolina history, and really the whole Eastern Coast history, because the colonial times helped shape what America would have been. And trying to absorb that and make it into an entertaining book was difficult because, some people don't like history. And I run into that a lot. The people will be like, well, I don't know if I want to, they call it an I bleed history book. And I'm like, well, mine's more like an adventure. So you don't feel like reading history, but you're getting the real actual facts.
So what's the connection with Blackbeard?
Well, I had already written my first book, Shadow of the Mountain, and I actually handwrote it all when I was my last year of high school.
Wow.
And so that was a big undertaking. And then that year, my sister unexpectedly went to heaven, and so I just needed something different. And so I had always loved history, and that happened to be the 300th anniversary of Blackbeard's death in 2018. So you had all this onslaught of articles and things that I was reading and just absorbing for my fun time. And I was like, man, this is so cool, but most people don't like to learn it. And so I was like, you know what? I already wrote the first book. I said I want to try my hand at historical fiction, which was a big undertaking. It took me 4 years of research to try to get Blackbeard. And my original one was Unlocking Blackbeard Skeletons. You read on more like this one first, Aboard Blackbeard's Queen, then the skeletons. But I wrote this one first, more North Carolina history. And then after I wrote this, everybody was asking me, they were like, well, what about Queen Anne's Revenge? Why didn't you talk about that? And it was simply because
What is that?
Queen Anne's Revenge is Blackbeard's famed ship. That was the one that he was most famous for, but that was not the one he died on. And that was one of the things that interested me to want to tell other people about. I was like, wow, there's so much about Blackbeard I thought I knew, but I didn't really actually understand. So it was a French ship. It was a slave ship, but during that time frame, it was really, it's a tough topic to talk about. And, during that time, they were taking Indian rugs to Africa, and then from Africa they would take the slaves to cotton places of well, not really plantations in the Caribbean, though. It wasn't what you think of as plantations, but they to work the fields basically. And so Blackbeard captured that ship in between the two, and a big chunk of them he allowed to become pirates. And it was like unheard of during that time frame that they got equal part just like everybody else. They got equal part of the plunder. They got equal vote. They had voting rights before we even had voting rights. So they were like before their time. It just blew my mind to understand all that. So the ship was huge. It made him look bigger than you've seen, and that was something else interesting to me about Blackbeard. Is that we always fear is the most fearsome pirate. Bloodthirsty killer, and there was a lot of pirates that were killers. But as far as I could tell, and that nobody knows 100% sure. But as far as I can tell, my research, there were no deaths under Blackbeard. He did not kill anybody until actually the day he died.
What was the most fascinating or maybe surprising fact that you uncovered during all this research?
That was pretty interesting to me. And as a faith-based person, when I found out that when Blackbeard died, half the crew died with him. And at that point, he had shrunk down to a small group. They actually thought the Queen Anne's Revenge that he sank off of current day Beaufort. They think now that, and I agree with that premise, that he sank it on purpose to downsize because the voting rights, they could vote them out at any time. And so he got whiffed that they were going to be doing a mutiny. And so he got rid of them before they got rid of him. He basically ran it ashore. And then while he was, let's everybody get everything off onto the island, which is current day Fort Macon, while they were doing that, he slipped off on a much smaller ship on the called the Adventure, which is what the Blackbeard Skeletons is more about, the last ship that he was on.
So do you be a pirate aficionado to enjoy these books?
I think I have a lot of readers who are just big history buffs.
Okay.
A lot of readers who just like adventure. If they like, Pirates of the Caribbean, they tend to like. Yes. I have a lot of youth, which is awesome to me because I'll see them sometimes again, and they're like, now I love history. Now I'm into it. And I'm like,
that's what you wanted to do. That's what you said,
yes,
you set out to accomplish, was to really make people interested in history. So this was really interesting. Your first book, Shadow of the Mountain, and Aboard Blackbeard's Queen.
yes,
The
ma'am.
main protagonists in both of those are cats.
Yes.
In Aboard Blackbeard's Queen, the main protagonist's name is Cooper. So that's an interesting perspective. How did you arrive at the decision to speak through the perspective of a cat?
Yeah, well, for Shadow of the Mountain, I was inspired by a group of feral cats in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So it was an actual group of cats that kind of inspired me. And when I saw them, that we were getting a new Taco Bell in that particular area, and you could tell that their home was getting messed up, And so I was like, well, wonder what they're going to think about that. So I decided to write a fictional story through their point of view, of no different than we do. We have to move sometimes or do things we don't particularly like, and how we react to that. I originally wrote it for kids, but I've had so many adults that have just loved it. So especially animal lovers. And so when I went to do the Blackbeard book, like I said, I written the original first, and then I wrote the Blackbeard's Queen. And I was trying to do a different perspective because I wanted something different. And I was like, okay, so what should I do? And I was trying to shoot for a younger age too, because a lot of kids, it's hard to get them interested in like an adult or teenage type protagonist. So when I was going with the Blackbeard's Queen, I was looking around and I decided to go through the cat because Blackbeard actually had a cat. We don't know its name, but all pirates, all merchants, even, supply merchants had to have a cat on the ship with a mice. And also because cats are really intuitive with weather changes, so they will act as their weather channel. So cats started acting weird, and Blackbeard would have known to take down the sails, secure the cannons. So, if a hurricane was coming, they didn't have modern day technology, so they depended on that. Pirates, that was something else that was very interesting to me, is they were very superstitious. They believed they had to have a black cat. Occasionally, they would have to get whatever cat they could come across. And so in my book, I decided to add that little twist and have the cat be a different color, orange color, that way. And everything that went wrong, it was the cat's fault. But I've had a lot of adults that have enjoyed it because they feel like Cooper is like a fly on the wall. The cat could sit and hear things that Blackbeard wouldn't say to everybody. So I was able to use that aspect of that. So
from a creative standpoint, what did you have more fun with? Did you enjoy writing from the perspective of the cat, or do you prefer the human perspective?
It's really hard to say because I love the human perspective as a reader. But for animals, I've also liked animal books because it's a challenge. We don't know what they're thinking. And so it kind of gets you out of your own problems in life and have to think through it. But it's a challenge as a writer because a cat can't do everything. So, you have to think about the limitations of that. But also with Cooper, I had fun with, seeing things from a different perspective. So, seeing history from a different perspective, because I wanted to mix not just it being through Cooper's point of view, but mix it with he can understand the humans. And so every time Blackbeard, it was hard to do that dance.
Yeah, because you're not a cat. So
yeah.
It's definitely a challenge. So now the protagonist, Robin, in Blackbeard's skeleton is Lizzie. She's a Christian teenager, and she spends several months with Blackbeard and his crew.
Yes, ma'am.
Human perspective. How was this a transformative experience for Lizzie?
It was, and when I was trying to figure out whether I was going to go with male or female in this one, I decided to go with female because a male would have naturally knew about sailing everything. So for me to be able to, I studied pirates, of course, but I also studied a lot about sailing, all the colonial, blacksmith, soap making, all that stuff, candles. I also had to study a lot about the Tuscarora Indian War because it would have affected them no different than 9/11 affected all of us. Mm-hmm. So, I had to try to get into that mindset, and I felt like you could do that better in a female perspective because I was able to tell the reader what was happening because Lizzie didn't really understand what was happening. As it talked down to. But, you know, women went through a lot during that time frame. And to be able to, you know, especially during the war anymore, a lot of the men were killed during the battles. And so the women were running the plantations. And so it was a big time for women empowerment, so to speak, too, to survive during that time frame.
And I'm sure that also connects with your younger female readers as well. I'm sure you have a lot of teenagers that are reading this.
Yeah. And surprisingly, a lot of boy teenagers, you know, because they were like, wow, I never realized it through that perspective before. So
yeah, it's really so interesting. So you've said that most of the names are fictionalized and the characters, but the places are real. You do a lot of research when you have visited these historical sites and you've seen the living history. Have you infused a lot of your own experiences into the plots and the characters?
I have. And, you know, sometimes if I didn't have a character name or the biggest thing, majority of the pirate names are real, but a lot of times I run into is there was lots of Thomases, lots of Johns, lots of Elizabeths.
Names of the time. Yeah.
Exactly. And they didn't have like, you know, John Jr. You know, most of the time they just named their kid the same and then they just went with it. And so I had to it's like one of my pirate characters, his father was a pirate and he was a pirate, but they both named Joseph. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? So I ended up nicknaming him JJ just to make it a little easier for the reader to understand what's going on. But, and a lot of the words were, when I was trying to get the documents, the way they hand wrote names, even in the censuses later on in life. You know, it was whoever was the census taker, depending on how it was worded and spelled. And it's like Blackbeard, the teach part is really more like thatch or tatch. But because it was the way it was worded down through the ages, it became what we would call teach. But, you know, it was never said that way. It was just the way it was worded. So it was difficult to sort through so the readers would understand and be able to follow the characters.
So, Robin, what makes a book unique or special? What's something important that an author, when they're writing for the genre, and it could be action adventure or historical fiction, what advice can you offer to aspiring authors?
One of the biggest things is as best you can is to try to get your setting right. Because your reader will pick up on it.
For example.
Well, like it's, excuse me, in the Unlocking Blackbeard Skeletons, there was a section of, I don't know how to say it exactly. Excuse me, let me get some water. Sorry. Like Philadelphia, there was a section in Philadelphia, and I was trying to struggle because I had never been there before of trying to show what it was.
It has to be accurate because you could have a reader reading, someone could be reading and be a native of Philadelphia and know those streets really well. So you have to really do your research.
Right. It makes a difference.
Different places, of course. Your books have all received awards, and you seem to be really cultivating a following with especially the Blackbeards. Are you thinking about a follow-up?
I am, because a lot of people want to know surprisingly, what happened to Blackbeard after the blood, because when I wrote this book, I never really intended to do another Blackbeard. And so when I decided to do the Cooper book, everybody was just excited. And I had to do some more research because a lot of the pirates he had left behind at Fort Macon were no longer with him in the second book. So I didn't really have to know a whole lot about him. So when I had to go back, got him. But in doing my research, I have had to do a lot about the pirates going forward so I could understand his contact with the governor, the townspeople. So I have considered doing to the since I did the prequel, a sequel.
Right, the prequel, the sequel. So did you already start your research, and do you anticipate that it's going to take you just as long to do the third book?
I don't think it will take as long. It's really difficult to when like the outline, for instance, when I first outlined it, I outlined exactly where Blackbeard went. And so there was a couple sections that I had to kind of ad lib. And a good example of that is in Unlocking Blackbeard Skeletons in September. There was like a 3-week window that I didn't know exactly what Blackbeard was doing. And so I was like, what am I going to do? Try to make it authentic. And then I knew he was going back to Ocracoke, but I didn't know exactly the date. And so I decided in my book to use that time to show the readers how to careen the ship, which was to scrape the barnacles off. It took 3 weeks. So I was like, this is perfect, 3-week window. It was sort of like a car. When we have to have an oil change, they had to do it every 3 months because it would slow the barnacles and all would slow down the ship. And it was a big process. They had to take everything off the ship, scrape it, tar it, then do the opposite side. And so that would be what I would have to do more so in a new book, and some of the gaps where that particular year, 17-18, was such a dramatic year with them tracking, had a tendency to write down more stuff. And that was what surprised me about Blackbeard when I found out that majority of the people that had written about him, it was like eyewitness accounts. And so I was like, okay, well, he didn't kill them if they were eyewitness accounts. And so that right. I believe that's why we know more about him, because he left tell what they were doing.
That's fascinating. So, finally, Robin, where can our readers learn a little bit more about you and also purchase all of your books?
You can purchase it just about anywhere, really. I love supporting independent bookstores, so you can go, even if your bookstore doesn't have them, you can have them order it for you. You can, of course, get them on Amazon. Barnes and Noble has them. A lot of museums up and down North Carolina coast has them, and select stores and gift shops has signed copies. I work with different people, and of course, I do personalized books for people if you want to do my email, and I do a lot of book signings, book fairs with children's things. I've got an upcoming book, which is book club thing event, so I'm doing more events and history talks. So that minority people can get them online, either online or independent.
Do you have a website where people can reach you?
No, I do have the Facebook, which is Books by Robin Reams.
Perfect.
On Facebook, and that's kind of, I feel like I can reach more readers because majority of my readers are such a broad age group. I mean, I've got 8-year-olds, and then I have 90-year-olds. So I'm trying to, the Facebook tends to be the one where I can connect with both sides.
So Robin, we know you're a historian. We know that you are a pirate buff. So what is something that our readers and listeners would be surprised to know about you?
Well, probably most of your listeners would be surprised to know that when I do events, I always dress like a pirate. Oh. So I get into the full thing, and I feel like that has a lot of people. Yes, right there, and that one. And then the other one is at Ocracoke at the annual Pirate Day in my costume. So I enjoy doing that, and I believe, a lot of it is faith-based too. I mean, that is big into a lot of people don't understand that. And it's because it's like, how can you be a pirate lover and, for God too? And it's when I found out that when Blackbeard died, half of his crew died with him. The other half were taken to Virginia to hang. And out of those, about 6 of them ended up coming back to Bath. And one of them, Edward Salter, helped start the first church in North Carolina. And I was like, that is such a testimony, that everybody can change, and everybody has that saving grace, and that God will help even the pirates. And then people was like, "Are you for real?" I was like, "Wow, the thief on the cross, one of them, the thief and a pirate." Right?
Exactly. Well, this is great and so interesting. We love the books, Robin, and we're looking forward to more. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Gabby.
It was great. Until next time, this is your hostess, Gabby Olczak of the GabTalks. Keep on reading.
in the way that it had to be written, not the way that necessarily I would have written it, and to make it more easily accessible to readers. Um, for example, if you try to read any of Gurdjieff's work, it's very obscure and it's difficult, but making the effort actually wakes you up.
Yes, I
And
could under.
and these are, we're covering a huge broad spectrum of ideas and trying to bring together the strands of different threads of knowledge, all the way from particle physics through biology and science, and all the way through mysticism. So we're trying to weave together a fabric from these various strands. And it was, I knew that it was ambitious, it took so long to actually, I was resisting even writing the book because of some of the controversial ideas that it introduces. But um, the reason it's written that way, it requires study. It's something like, and I myself have studied books that were difficult because it requires the use of all three brains. We have three brains. We have the moving instinctive center, we have the emotional center, and we have the intellectual center, and it requires the use of all three brains.
It most certainly does. But the way you have written the book, it is in a more conversational tone, so it is approachable.
Yes, thank you. I tried to do that, and I was writing it in a way like I was having a chat with a friend, or just telling this to my grandchildren.
Like right now, for example, during our interview, I mean, you clarified a lot of points that may have seemed very obscure to some people, but the book is very interesting. Uh, Gary, what is your hope for humanity?
I believe that I do have a lot of hope for humanity. I believe that every person has a higher part and a lower part. We have a lower animal part because we evolved from that, but we also have a higher spiritual part. And it's a battle between those two. And we have the capability of transcending ourselves, of actually raising our consciousness. Individually, we can do that. Absolutely. And that contributes to the common consciousness. So my hope is that, yes, I believe that despite the way that things look presently in the year 2024, 2025, things are relatively, with global warming, pollution, war, all the things that have been happening throughout our lifetimes, accelerating. We are approaching the great filter, but I have hope that the human species, we will become a successful vehicle of consciousness.
I hope so as well. Gary, what is your life mantra when you wake up every day in Australia? What do you say to yourself?
Victory to the truth and triumph to the invincible sun. Yes, I say victory to the truth, because the problems that we face are through the darkness of human ignorance. And the truth, actually, the old biblical phrase that the truth will set us free, and going back to Plato, even, yes, the truth will set us free.
Thank you so much. So are you working on any other projects? How long did it
Yes,
take to write this book, Gary?
it took a long time in terms of, I hesitated for so long. I think some of the reviewers asked me that in interviews, that it took, I was reluctant because I don't think that I have, who am I to, um, to actually expound such truths. But I think it was needed, and no one else was doing it. And the books, however, there are very direct sources of this available, from my teacher, who passed away in 1987, and many others, like Irina Tweedy. She was an extraordinary person. She was herself a human number five, and I had the privilege of meeting her in London in 1990. And so I've had the privilege of being in direct contact with some of these people. and their books, I highly recommend Mrs. Tweedy, and I highly recommend my own teacher, Abdullah Dugan. That's the direct source. This is an introduction, nothing more than an introduction from someone who is a pupil, still a pupil, making a sincere effort.
So what you did mention that you are working on other projects, Gary. What's happening? What can you share with us?
Well, I was I worked in Afghanistan for 2 years, from 2004 to 2006, working in humanitarian aid there. And during that time when we were long periods of time when we were locked down because of security issues. And I had completed a novel then, which takes place in Nepal, and it is based on a true story of a young woman there. And so I lost that manuscript after I came back from Afghanistan, but it was recovered off of an old floppy disk recently by a tech expert down in Melbourne. So we recovered the manuscript, so I'm now working on that. Yeah,
that's a positive aspect.
It talks about some of these ideas, but in the form of a novel. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so interesting. Do you have a pub date, or that it's a work in progress?
Well, it's actually the manuscript was finished, but I'm not satisfied with it. It's got a lot of work to be done to it. Yeah.
Okay, well, we look forward to it. So lastly, Gary, how can our readers find out more about GE Pool and purchase your book in frequent frequencies?
Well, it's on, of course, Amazon, and it's in the last. It's only recently been published, but it's published by a small publisher in Adelaide called Greenhill Publishing. And but it's selling a lot of sales through Amazon, but also Goodreads particularly. It's doing very well on Goodreads and Barnes and Noble, all the major booksellers, and on the online sales, there's a lot of interest there. The idea here is not to sell books; it's really to get these ideas out. These ideas are timely for everyone, but particularly for young people. And I wish I could have conveyed them in a simpler way that would allow them to become more accessible. So that's why we're looking at working on an audiobook.
An audiobook would most definitely be more accessible for young people. You a lot of very interesting perspectives, and I think that young people, if it's in an audio form, that's how they read books nowadays. I know that's how my children read books, so that would.
That's what all my children. That's what I got. All my children have said to me, and they said, you really got to put this into audio. Yeah, so yeah, how to do that? I'm working on it. Yeah.
I agree. Well, let us know as soon as that happens, and we'll get the information out there to our readers and our viewers. Well, Gary, thank you so much for speaking with us today. This was really wonderful. I appreciate your time, waking up so early for us in Australia, and it was great meeting you.
Thank you. It's great to meet you as well, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Join us next podcast when we chat with Christina Vitigliano about her memoir, Every 9 Minutes. This is your hostess, Gabby Olczak of the GabTalks. Until next time, keep on reading.